Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Green Valley Digital Classes. This is Aman, and today we will be discussing the chapter 2nd of 11th class or 12th class, that is Principles of Management. As we discussed in the first chapter itself, Introduction to the Management, we said that management is both science as well as an art. And this is the basis for principles of management. So when we say management is science, we discuss certain things in that which concluded that management is science. And we will repeat it just in a brief so that it will recapitulate us, and then we will move on to the next part of it. So if we say science, science was based on experimentation and observation that we discussed. So any management principle that has come from experimentations and observations, and which provided us certain results, and these results are universally applicable. So a science has experimentation and observation that provides certain results, and these results can universally be applied. And third, science has cause and effect relation. So management also has science which says there are certain causes and these causes have certain effects. For example, if we are providing salary to our employees and it increases their efficiency and productivity, so salary became the cause and efficiency and productivity became the result or effect. But the question is, who came up with this point that giving more salary, giving more increments to employees will provide better efficiency and better productivity? That was when certain experimentation and observations were conducted and certain results were achieved, and they concluded that there is a certain cause of any behavior and that will create a behavior that management hopes to do. So when we come to the principles of management, these are simply guidelines or statements which are implemented to create a result for efficient and effective completion of a task. So these are certain guidelines, these are certain statements which were propounded by many scholars, many management thinkers, and they are implemented so that we create efficiency and effectiveness and we complete a certain task which will result in achievement of our objective. So principles are nothing, they are simply guidelines, they are statements, they are only the things which they have come up with. They didn't find it anywhere, only when they experimented and observed. So with this, they came up with certain guidelines, certain statements, and which can be implemented so that we can create efficiency and effectiveness, and that will allow us to achieve organizational objective. So before proceeding further, we will discuss just in a brief that how it was started. Principles of management have evolved since Industrial Revolution and then went on to classical era, classical management era, then neoclassical, then into behavioral era, and then into modern era. So you can see the evolution which went across many stages, and today we have modern era, but these eras also have their importance. If it was not for the classical management era, we could not have come up with the modern era techniques of management. So when we say Industrial Revolution plus Adam Smith, a renowned economist, in his Wealth of Nations said that for any nation to acquire wealth, to accumulate wealth, to increase wealth, what we need to do, we need to properly allocate resources, and properly utilize them. And how do we utilize it? By creating division of work. So he laid the foundation of principles of management. He said, if we are to accumulate wealth, if we are to increase the wealth of a nation, then the only way to do it is when we will properly utilize the resources and we will allocate them. And how do we utilize them and how do we allocate them properly? By dividing the task into smaller parts and assigning a smaller part of work to a particular individual. That will lead to specialization. So like for example, we have a table that is to be constructed. So it comes from big logs of wood. So who will cut down this wood? That is one part. Who will paint it? That is another part. Who will join it? That is another part. Who will pack it? So the making of table can be divided into four parts. You have to chop down the pieces of logs, then you have to paint them, then you have to join them, and then you have to pack them. So he said, divide them up. So we have four activities. Painting will be done by a certain group of individuals, joining will be done by a certain group of individuals, and packing will be done by a certain group of individuals. So when they repeatedly will perform these tasks, it will create specialization for these. They will be specialized in painting, they will be specialized in joining, and they will be specialized in packing. That is how you create specialization. But he did not further explain it in other principles. Rather, he said that creation of wealth is dependent on proper allocation of resources, proper utilization of resources. And to do that, we have to create division of labor, division of work. So he somehow laid the foundation of the long journey that we had from classical to neoclassical to behavioral and to modern era of management. As far as our principles of management is concerned, it is focusing on classical era, having two major theories: scientific management and administrative theory of management, and also bureaucracy theory. Scientific management was given by F.W. Taylor, a scientist and an engineer by profession. Adam Smith, administrative theory of management was given by Henry Fayol, a management thinker and researcher, and bureaucracy theory was given by Max Weber. So these three theories define the classical era of management, and somehow they were the breakthrough theories which paved the way for additional evolution, additional studies to be conducted in neoclassical, in behavioral and in modern era today, which we implement in our organizations, and we almost have revolutionized how we are performing the management activities. So before discussing any of the theories, we shall discuss in brief the features of principles of management. So the first principle of management is that it is universally applicable. What do we mean by universally applicable? Because these are general statements, guidelines, so they can be implemented in any part of the world, in any organization, whether small, whether large. You see any principle that these theories put forth, they are implemented in the state of India, they are implemented in the state of UK, they are implemented in the state of USA, they are implemented in any part of the world, irrespective of what the geography is, what the work is, what the activities are. So they are universally applicable. Second is, they are general guidelines. General guidelines simply means they do not specify. Let's for example say that Henry Fayol says that there has to be discipline in an organization. There has to be authority and responsibility relationship. But he did not specify how much. What authority should be given? How much authority should be given? He said there should be a balance. So it is up to the organization itself what kind of balance they would like to create. So they are general guidelines. They are common to all. It is up to them how they will use these guidelines. Then we have cause and effect relation. So because it is science, These principles are based on scientific methodologies. So they create cause and effect relationship. Like we discussed in the previous example as well, that when an employee is to be motivated, we should provide salary, we should provide incentives. So who came up with this concept that incentives is the cause and the result or the effect is his satisfaction and his improved performance? So it creates cause and effect relationship. You do certain things, there will be certain things which will happen according to these. If you pay well, people will be satisfied. If you do not pay well, people will be dissatisfied. If you provide them good working environment, they'll be satisfied. If you do not provide them good working environment, they'll be dissatisfied. Then we have, that is by changing behavior. So these principles, they change the behavior. They cause the change in the behavioral aspects of the employees. And when we say behavior of employees, we're not talking of anger, we're not talking of love, we're not talking of affection. The behavior of an employee is his work performance, his absenteeism, his interpersonal relations with other employees, and subordination. So all these are part of his behavior. How he is performing, whether he remains absent frequently or not, whether his interpersonal relations with other employees is well off or not, and is he following his orders to the letter and spirit of his superior. So if a person is satisfied, let's say for example, he will perform better, he will have less absenteeism. So but how do I create less absenteeism? When employee is satisfied. And how do I create satisfied employee? By creating certain causes, by providing certain incentives, by providing certain stimuli that will allow us to have satisfied employee, and we will change his behavior according to our desires and according to our motives. So these are some of the principles, principal features of these principles of management. And now what we will discuss is the first theory of management that was put forth was by F.W. Taylor. And F.W. Taylor was working as a floor engineer in Midvale Steel, where he discovered certain inefficiencies as far as the workers are considered. They were into making pieces of iron. So he said that I found many indiscrepancies, many loopholes where the efficiency was compromised and employees, the workers, were not able to perform up to their maximum limit. So he said that there has to be a certain way out where we can increase the productivity of these employees and in whole increase the efficiency of the organization. So he said that we have to base our principles on scientific methods. That's why this theory is termed as scientific management theory, because he said every statement, every observation, anything that you do or that you ask of others to do, it should be based on scientific methodology and scientific principles. So he started a revolution in a way that he said no, there should be nothing like okay, whatever I feel like we should do it. No, everything what I say should have scientific proof, should have scientific logic behind it. And that is the first principle that he propounded, that science, not rule of thumb. So this is the first principle that he suggested, that everything that happens in an organization, whether I have to write, whether I have to pack something, whether I have to construct something, whether I have to lift something, whether I have to store something, everything should be based in science, not rule of thumb. Rule of thumb means which has no scientific logic, which is just by the hunch of any person that we should do something like this, something like that. No, that is not the case. It should be based in science, and no rule of thumb that whatever somebody likes, he will do it in his own way. Man marzi nahi chalegi. What everybody has to do, it has to be based on science. Then harmony, not discord. When you have principles, guidelines based on science, everybody will follow the same rule, same principle, same methodology. It will create harmony within the organization. And he said that harmony will create less discord. Discord means disturbances, conflicts, confusions. So everybody know what is the scientific method of performing any task, what is the scientific rule of doing anything. So it will create harmony, and harmony is also created by having interpersonal relation among your employees. Then he said that training of managers. The third principle that he suggested is that there should be development of managers. It is not the role of a worker and manager to learn these things on their own. So you train managers, and these managers will train employees and other workers. So in a way, he said, shift responsibility of training from worker to manager. So what was done previously? It was done that whosoever was performing the task, he will perform the task as per his own wish, and he will do it in his own way. He said no, these workers need to be trained, and it is the role of the manager to train these employees. Manager will know what is the scientific rule. Manager will know how it is to be done, who will do it, and he will assign the task, and he will be the one who will train all the managers and tell them how the tasks will be performed. Then he said another principle, cooperation, not individualism. What do we mean by this principle? He said among the employees, among the workers, there has to be cooperation. Cooperation comes when there is trust, when there is best interpersonal relation, when there is healthy interpersonal relation. That's why these two principles are very much important. When you know how it is to be done in a scientific methodology, and you have good interpersonal relations and harmony, it will create cooperation. Nobody will work for their own selfish goals. It will not be based on individualism, that my goal, my salary, my work. No, it will be our work, our goal, our benefit, organization as a whole beneficial for us. So creation of cooperation among the employees, he said, is a pinnacle or breaking point of creating an efficient organization. Then he said, create mental revolution. In mental revolution, he said that when workers will believe in science, they will believe that we have to create harmony within the organization, and managers will train the organizing workers, and there should be cooperation among the employees. All these factors in combination will create a mental revolution, that workers will start to believe, no, everything can be done. All we need to do is base it on science, have good interpersonal relations with our colleagues, with our peers. We will be trained, we will be performing better, and we have to believe in cooperation of others. It is not me who can do it. No, I will only do it with the help of somebody else. So when all these things are believed, it can create a mental revolution. So these are the principles that were put forth by Taylor, but he did not only tell us what to do, but he also said how it is to be done. And for that he said methods or techniques of scientific management. So as far as techniques of scientific management is considered, the first technique he suggested was time study. Studying time. What did he meant by this? He said that to perform any activity from start to finish, it will take some time, and this time you record with the help of stopwatch. So once you analyze what time it takes from start to finish, you can always try to improve this time and come up with a standard time to complete this task. So for example, if I have to paint a wall, I will see how much time it takes to paint a wall using a stopwatch. Then next worker, I will see whether he will be able to improve this time or not and create a standard time for painting the wall. And let's say, for example, the standard time is 30 minutes to paint 10 by 10 dimensional wall. So everybody has to stick to this 30 minutes standard. Nobody can take 35, nobody can take 39. So what I try to do is reduce this time. Complete this painting within 30 minutes. So 30 minutes became the standard time of completing a certain task. Then he said, motion study. Motion study was a very mechanical approach of analyzing somebody's performance. He said, whenever anybody is performing a task, it's a physical task and there are certain motions involved. Some are productive, some are non-productive. He said, eliminate all the unwanted motions, unwanted and non-productive body motions. So if I am painting the wall, the productive motion is the movement of my hand and movement of my arm. In his opinion, moving my body or moving my legs was unproductive because I require only hand to paint the wall, or moving my head, that is also unproductive. He said eliminate them. It will do two things. First, your energy is conserved and you will break down the task into certain limited number of body motions, and those body motions which are not required, eliminate them. So he kind of thought of an individual or a worker as a mechanized machinery, where we can stop one activity and others will start, where we can remove one part and others will also work. So time study and motion study collectively gave us method study. Now you have standard time to complete the task. You have standard body motions which we will perform in completing a certain task. So you have time as well as motions, and it will create one best method of performing a task. So once you come up with the standard time, you come up with standard motions of the body, you come up with one best method of performing a task. Everybody who will come and paint this wall, they know what time it will take. They know what body motions are to be used. Nobody can take 35 minutes. Nobody can use those body motions which are not to be done. So in a way, we get one best method of performing a task. So we have time study, we have motion study, and we have method study. Then we have, that's what you call as functional foremanship. Foremen are those individuals who are part of the floor management, who are part of performing the task, and they are in direct contact with the workers. He said we have to categorize functional foremanship. Foremen will perform a certain specific duty, and these duties will be performed by certain foremen, and that will create specialization. And he divided foremanship into two parts: planning and production. So there are certain positions, certain foreman positions which are linked with planning. There are certain foreman positions which are linked with production. In planning, he said the first one is route clerk. Second one is instruction clerk. Third one is time and cost clerk. And fourth one is shop discipline clerk. So like we say, they are planning foremen. They will plan, first one, route clerk. Any activity that is to be done, if raw material comes, how he will pass through the shop floor. From one machine to another, he will create a route for this. And every time, this route shall be followed. So he said one clerk will create a route, will plan a route for any activity that is to be performed. Second, instruction clerk. He will create set of instructions for different workers to follow. If one is for performing on machine 1, he will have different set of instructions. If somebody is performing on machine 2, he will have different set of instructions. Somebody who is handling material, he will have different set of instructions. Somebody who is handling packaging, he will have different set of instructions. So every activity shall have different instructions, and it is the job of instruction clerk to come up with these instructions. Then time and cost clerk, a very important part. Clerk or a foreman who will decide what amount of time is to be taken by one activity and what cost it will incur. So he will create the standard of time and cost which everybody who is performing the task shall follow. Then shop discipline clerk. He will make sure the arrival time, the departure time, the time which is to be taken for all the other activities besides production to create the discipline, and he will overlook how one activity is done and how other activities is to be performed. So these are the 4 foremen under the planning head. Then in the production we have gang boss. He will be the leader of those foremen who are actually related to the production part, and he will be the boss of their group. Then inspection clerk. He will look for the quality control. He will look and he will check whether the production is done as per the quality standards or not. He will see whether the products that are to be produced, are up to the mark or not. Then we have speed boss. Speed boss will check the time taken for one product to reach the other division, from one area to reach to other division. The only thing there is that he will maintain that the speed with which the production takes place, the speed with which the products or the raw materials transfer from one department to another is up to the standard time or not. And the last one is repair boss. He will make sure that if the breakdown of any machinery is problematic, and if there is any problem in the machinery, they will have to report them, and he will have to make sure that these machines are repaired in the proper nick of time, so that the speed is not compromised, the quality is not compromised, and the time and the cost which we had decided is not compromised. So this finishes the part 1 of principles of management. Second part inshallah will be discussed in the next lecture. Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to the part 2 of chapter 2 of 12th class, Principles of Management. In the previous lecture we discussed the scientific management and the evolution of the management, and this part will have another important principle part of the management is given by Henry Fayol and called as administrative theory, or we can say 14 principles of management. So Henry Fayol said an organization has to implement 14 principles in its organization to create efficiency and effectiveness. And he started with first principle, that is division of work. It was propounded by Adam Smith as well when we discussed in the first chapter, that he said to create specialization, divide the work into smaller parts, and each part will be performed by given set of individuals. So this whole work is divided into part 1, part 2, part 3 and part 4 activities. So this set of activities will be performed by one set of individuals. These set of activities will be performed by a certain set of individuals, and so on and so forth. So they will repeatedly perform these tasks, they will repeatedly perform these activities, and it will lead to specialization and reduce the burden of employees. So the first principle that was put forth by Henry Fayol was divide the work into smaller jobs and assign these jobs to specific individuals who will repeatedly perform it and create specialization. Then he said unity of command. In simple terms we can say one subordinate, one boss. This is the one-line definition of this principle. A subordinate should receive orders from one source, one supervisor. If there are multiple supervisors, there will be confusion, there will be contradiction, and he will not be sure whose order to follow. Let's say, for example, this employee has two bosses, orders coming from this boss and orders coming from this boss. Whom should he listen to? This one or this one? If he agrees and performs his duty, his will be neglected, and if he performs his duty, his will be neglected. So there's a contradiction, there's a conflict. So to reduce this conflict, every subordinate should have a single boss from whom the direction will come, the orders will come, and it will create unity of direction. When there is one boss, he will give us the tasks that we will perform, the work that we are perform, and the objective that we have to achieve. So when there is one boss, he will give given set of instructions, he will give one set of instructions, and he will provide one set of objective. And when everybody will follow that set of objective, it will create unity of direction. So to create unity of direction, there has to be a single objective. So if there are multiple bosses, they will have multiple objectives. So maybe the problem is there are multiple directions that we have to go in. So in Fayol's opinion, he said it will lead to inefficiency. If there is one man who is giving the orders, he has one clear set of instructions and tasks we have to perform, and he will create a single objective that everybody will follow, and that will create unity of direction. Then we have fourth principle, that is authority and responsibility. And responsibility. He said authority simply means the ability to give instructions and orders to the subordinates, and responsibility means to follow the responsibility of having these orders fulfilled. So if there is a boss and he is giving orders to his subordinate, so it is his authority to issue orders, commands, and it is the responsibility of the subordinate to follow those commands and instructions. So he said there has to be a proper balance between authority and responsibility. He didn't say how much authority should be given. No, he said create a balance. Some people, some individuals who are authorized to issue orders, to issue commands, and there are certain individuals who are responsible to carry out these instructions. And in a way, he said these two will create a balance. Some people will give orders, some people will follow orders, and this forms the very basis of creating an organization when there is a proper balance of authority and responsibility. Consider a situation where there are all of the bosses and nobody to perform the duties. What will happen? Or the reverse. If there are too many workers but no bosses at all, so there is an imbalance. Both the situations are not productive. So what he said, there should be a balance. There should be authority, there should be responsibility, and that will lead to an efficient organization. Then he said discipline. In discipline, he said that in an organization there should be discipline, which even Taylor was fond of. Discipline is created when every instrument, every tool, everything in the organization has its proper place. It is not haphazard. We know where machine 1 is, we know where machine 2 is, we know where raw material is, we know where other tools are, we know other facilities are. So each and everything has its own place, creating a disciplined organization. And when everybody has the clarity of authority and responsibility, they have unity of direction, they have unity of command, they will also lead to a disciplined organization. Then we have is equity. Another important principle of Fayol. He said there should be equity within the organization. It leads to behavior of employees in relation to their supervisors. Supervisors, he said, should treat every employee with respect, with dignity, with affection. There should be nothing of sort that somebody is doing good and he will be praised and somebody who is not so good will be ridiculed. No, there has to be an equal treatment as far as behavior is concerned. And second, if for example we have employees who are performing well, yes, you should provide them incentives. But if a worker is not performing so well, you should give them the also opportunity of performing that well, and maybe they will also get remuneration. So he said there has to be equitable behavior. So he somehow said there is no room of any personal bias. You will not say that I like this person and you will be good to him no matter how his performance is. No. He said it has to be based on equitable behavior. If you treat one person politely, second one should also be treated politely. If you are scolding somebody for non-performing, somebody else also should be scolded for non-performing. So he said there has to be equity within the organization. Then subordination of personal interest to organizational goal. A very important principle, that subordination of your personal interest. Keep your personal interest subordinate to the organizational goal. So the primary concern should be achievement of organizational goal. And after that, you should worry about your personal interests. So I cannot say that my salary, my promotion or anything is only thing which I am concerned about. No. He said you should be concerned first about the organizational goal and then your personal interest, because it is logical. If the organizational goals are achieved, my personal interests will also be fulfilled. So subordinate them. Keep your personal interest secondary. Primary is organizational goal. It should not be the reverse. I will keep my personal interest at forefront and organizational goal is secondary or on tertiary basis. No. First it comes organizational goal, then other personal interests will follow. Then he said remuneration. In Fayol's principle, he said remuneration should be fair. But he didn't say how much. All he said that you should pay fair remuneration to the workers. Now it is up to the organization how they will decide upon what is the fair remuneration. If you say, I will pay according to the production of an employee, that is fair. If you say according to somebody's work he has put in, that is fair, but it has to be fair. You cannot say that somebody has worked for 10 hours, I will give him the salary of 4 hours. No. If he has worked for 10 hours, he should get a salary of 10 hours. If somebody has worked for 5 hours, he should get salary of 5 hours. But it is to the organization, they should provide fair remuneration. Then, stability of tenure. Stability of tenure, another very important principle of management is that he said create an environment within the organization. And that will come up when there is unity of command, when there is unity of direction, when there is equity, when there is discipline, when there is clear authority and responsibility, and when you pay fair remuneration to your employees. It will create an environment within an organization that will allow an employee to stay within the organization. And if employees are not satisfied, they are not getting good salaries, or rather we say fair salaries, they are not having clear authority and responsibility, clarity, they are not having unity of command, they are not having unity of direction, and they are not paid salary or even treated equally, it will create dissatisfied employee, and that will allow them to leave the organization, and it will create unstable organization. So to create stable organization, you need stable workers. And how do you create stable workers? By providing them the environment wherein they will feel secure, they are satisfied, and they will not leave the organization, creating the stability of tenure. Then he said centralization and decentralization. Two important concepts of principles of management and decentralization. When we say centralization, it is the accumulation of decision-making authority within few hands. Like we say in top management, if the more power lies with the top management and every decision is taken by them, it is called centralization. But there are organizations where lower levels are also taking the decisions. They are given the authority to take decisions. It will create decentralized organization. Let's say, for example, in a school, every decision is taken by the principal. Teachers, the heads of the departments are not allowed to take any decision. It's a centralized organization. While as if in other school, yes, principal has certain decisions, but other decisions like timetable, like syllabus, like examination, it is taken by the HODs and the teachers. It will create decentralized organization. He said, like authority and responsibility, there should be a proper balance between centralization and decentralization. An organization cannot be fully centralized. An organization cannot be fully decentralized. You have to create a balance. And that balance will be created when you have balance of authority and responsibility. So some part of centralization is good and some part of decentralization is also good. So the proper balance should be struck between centralization and decentralization. Then we had scalar chain, or we can say chain of command. He was of the opinion that any instruction, any command going from one position to another should follow a proper chain, should follow a proper direction. And he portrayed it in a diagram. A, B, C, D, E, F and G. If suppose A has to pass on any command to E, it will follow from A to B, B to C, C to D, and then D to E. So this is the path which instructions will follow. And for example, if F has to pass on the message or the commands to C, it will be C to E, E to D, and D to C. And every time message is to be followed, this path is to be followed. But if there is any emergency or unusual situation, if B has to pass on message to F, he said, in a state of emergency, this path should not be followed. What should we do rather? Bypass the path, and he called it as gangplank. So he created a shorter path for it. He said, no, in a state of emergency, in a state of unique situation, no need to follow the path. You straight away bypass it and create a direct relation, a direct communication channel with another position, and he called it as gangplank. But in a normal situation, a route is to be followed for commands to be passed from one position to another. Then we have, that is initiative. In this principle, what Fayol was saying is that you should provide motivation and confidence to your employees, which will allow them to be initiating. Initiating of what? Something they feel is productive. If an employee feels that this task should be done in this manner, this activity should be performed in this manner, he should have the confidence, he should have the motivation to say, yes, I will be able to do it. But how does it come into an organization? If you are fearful of your boss, if you know whatever I do, I cannot do it without the permission of my boss, he will scold me, he will reprimand me, it cannot lead to initiative. Initiative leads when the organization creates such a climate that employees feel whatever is good for the organization, I can do it. I don't need to ask anyone of it. I can put it forth and it will be accepted for the betterment of an organization. So he said, you should create initiative within an organization where employees will come up with ideas, will come up with innovative things to perform anything, any activity in a better manner. And there should be no reprimand that they presented this idea before the management. So if anything is good for the organization, employees should take the initiative and perform this task. Then the last one is esprit de corps. The last principle, and in literal terms it says unity is strength. Somehow relating to Fayol's cooperation, not individualism. So he said unity is strength. Create the environment where groups of individuals are working together in a unified manner, because if I can do one task individually up to a certain limit, collectively I can perform it even better. Like simple example of a team playing in a football match. A player who is of brilliant skill cannot score a single goal if he doesn't have the support of other players. It is because of his support he is able to score and win a match for his team. A single player cannot win till the time he doesn't have support of his. So there has to be unity within them, that we are playing for a common goal, we have common set of instructions, we have our common goal which is more important than our personal goal. So that will create unity within the organization. And he said if there is unity, that will become the strength of an organization. Tasks, resources and other activities will be performed in a better manner. So these are the 14 principles of Henry Fayol, and many of them are still implemented on the organization and up to the best of the capacity of the managers, and they are proving to be very much fruitful. This was all today. Inshallah, hope to see you in the next lectures. For that and till that time, thank you so much. Fi amanillah.